Hey guys, tonight we're journeying from the sun-scorched dunes of the Hijaz to the marble courtyards of the Ottoman sultans, tracing the remarkable evolution of a desert revelation into a sprawling caliphate. You'll feel the grit of Bedouin tents, the thrum of Medina's marketplaces, and the echo of cannon fire in Anatolia as we uncover how faith, politics, and power intertwined over a millennium of empire building. Before we dive in, if you enjoy these midnight histories, be sure to tap that like button and subscribe. Your support keeps these ancient stories alive. Now, lower your lamps, pull up your coziest blanket, and let the distant whisper of date palm councils and palace fountains guide you into a restful, dream-tinged slumber. In the early 6th century CE, Bedouin clans clustered beneath date palm canopies on the ochre plains of the Hijaz, forging alliances as survival demanded both sand and solidarity. A blistering sun reflected off wind-swept dunes at midday, turning skin's bronze and camel's breath into rising mirages. Dry breezes carried the sharp tang of burned incense from nomadic altars, mingling with the distant clatter of camel bells. Tribal elders draped in woolen robes kept silent watch, their faces etched with salt and sand like living manuscripts of desert life. Women moved between council circles with quiet authority, exchanging clay tokens of negotiation during marriage pacts and inheritance talks. Inheritance rights took the form of date clusters and grazing rights allocated by clan consensus rather than royal decree. Weekly Friday gatherings resembled primitive town halls, where separate male and female assemblies shared echoes of trade news and blood feuds. A single palm frond podium served as pulpit when cursive scribes read treaties by torchlight at dusk. Date palm canopies offered dappled relief, their fronds whispering ancient lullabies under starlit skies. Travelers arriving from Yathrib carried tales of intertribal skirmishes along caravan routes stretching toward Mecca. A lone caravan in 595 CE braved sandstorms to deliver rosewater jars and incense to the Quraysh markets. Spice merchants measured saffron threads against cloth bolts, marking the region's growing importance in early trade networks. Oral poetry competitions at oases drew crowds of hundreds, where rivals recited genealogies to validate power claims. A celebrated poet once compared the Quraysh's camel herds to clouds drifting across a parched sky, earning grudging admiration. Clan alliances pivoted on thin promises sealed with dates and goat hides. Betrayal tasted of bitter ash. Women's roles extended beyond domestic spheres into the arbitration of disputes over water wells and grazing lands. A notable case in 602 CE saw a female elder successfully claim her brother's share of a date grove, setting a precedent whispered across the desert. Friday sermons doubled as late afternoon commerce fairs, where turmeric-scented leatherwork changed hands under palm shadows. Tribal lore emerged from oral traditions codified by storytellers who memorized lineage tables of dozens of clans. Each clan's banner bore symbolic patterns stitched in camel hair, denoting ancestral victories or defeats. Roasted grains crackled in communal ovens, their nutty aroma mixing with camel dung fires at twilight. Musicians plucked rudimentary oud strings, weaving lullabies that blended Bedouin tunes with nascent poetic forms. A traveling scribe recorded these melodies in charcoal on stone fragments, precursors to later Quranic calligraphy. Legends spoke of a mysterious traveler who brought medicinal syrups from Yemen, temporarily halting a fever epidemic among date-picking laborers. Evidence suggests that epidemics occurred in cycles of 7 to 10 years, shaping clan migration patterns across the Hijaz. Clan chieftains measured land holdings in camel grazing days, a metric that fluctuated with seasonal water availability. Desert storms carved ephemeral riverbeds that fed seasonal oases, creating lifelines for herds and humans alike. A pebble-lined cistern at Wadi Nakhla hinted at early communal water-sharing agreements, predating Islam by decades. Social cohesion relied on honor codes enforced by public oaths, sworn over date palms and incense burners. Women participated in oath ceremonies, placing their hands on polished date clusters to signify binding commitment. The convergence of tribes at these canopies laid the groundwork for the Hijra 2 decades later. Early clan bonds foreshadowed the formal constitution of Medina, where mutual defense superseded blood vendettas. The promise of shared water rights and trade profits became more compelling than traditional vendettas under the unforgiving sun. Sand-saturated leather tents flapped like tired banners in winter winds, sheltering storytellers who passed down tribal myths. The desert's austerity bred resilience, as clans even joked about roasting lost camels for dinner. Trade routes along the Red Sea coast funneled exotic goods, injecting the Hijaz with a paradox of scarcity and sudden wealth. Archaeological digs at ancient caravanserais uncovered shards of Byzantine pottery, alongside date seeds, evidence of early globalization. Those shards now shimmer in museum displays far from the sands that birthed them. Tribal hospitality extended to strangers, but betrayal invited swift and brutal reprisal beneath the same palms. The desert's harshness tempered the iron will of future faith leaders, forging communal bonds that no amount of sand could erode. These roots in mutual obligation and shared hardship set the stage for transformative revelations to come. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the date palms cast elongated shadows that whispered of a world on the brink of divine intervention. The balance between survival and solidarity under these palms foreshadowed the larger social experiment about to unfold. Evening winds carried the scent of sandalwood and anticipation as clans prepared for changes more profound than shifting dunes. In that liminal twilight, tribal origins in the Hijaz awaited the spark that would ignite a new communal destiny. In 622 CE, clans converged on Yathrib's oasis, transforming a dusty date grove into the first nucleus of a unified Muslim polity. Dry air carried the scent of cumin and coriander from spice merchants arranging barrels along narrow alleys. Communal ovens glowed at dawn, baking flatbreads whose yeasty aroma mingled with palm frond smoke. Wells lined with glazed stone reflected sunlit ripples, offering cool respite to camel caravans. Colourful fabrics draped over market stalls billowed like flags in the morning breeze. Matrons in indigo-dyed robes negotiated dower payments measured in wheat, sheaves, and goats. A 624 CE account records Khadija's merchants paying triple the going rate for dates to secure safe passage through rebel clans. Henna-stained hands lifted clipped scrolls of the Constitution of Medina, binding 12 tribes in mutual defense. Separate men's and women's spaces abutted the central mosque, their voices carrying like wind through palm trunks. Negotiations echoed through the courtyard as elders hammered out water-sharing schedules by torchlight. A midwinter sandstorm forced traders into tents, where lanterns cast flickering shadows on legal parchments. Inhabitants whispered of Muhammad's arrival on camelback beneath a blood-red sky, heralding a new era. Friday prayers doubled as city councils, where messages of exile and pardon passed between rows of worshippers. Women offered clay cups of sour milk to weary pilgrims, their hospitality as binding as any treaty. A famous incident in 623 CE saw female negotiators successfully argue for grain rations for widows of fallen converts. Spice vendors touted Yemeni frankincense as medicinal balm for plague outbreaks that struck every 7 years. Plagued wells were sealed with palm fiber stoppers until prayers and ritual cleansings lifted the curse. Oral recitations of Revelation interwove legal injunctions with poetic flourishes memorized by dozens of scribes. Streets ran red with ochre dust, churned by sandal-shod feet and laden donkey carts. A lone calligrapher etched verses onto parchment, using dates' fibrous ink, preserving revelations for posterity. Market haggling included quips from butchers about using traitors' bones for skewers. Caravan leaders paid zakat in silver dirhams, financing fortifications against raiders along the desert fringes. A census in 624 CE recorded 14 clans, 1,200 households, and 30 guilds of artisans. Chemical analysis of surviving pottery shards reveals olive oil rations increased by 15% after migration. Matrimonial alliances linked Quraysh notables to Ors and Khazraj families through 5 arranged marriages recorded in city annals. A roughly carved pulpit bore the inscription, "Unity through faith." Its letters worn smooth by pilgrims. Palm frond roofs sheltered public readings of legal disputes, where judgment stones settled claims over camels and concubines. Water jugs cooled in shallow pools, their clay surfaces exhaling dampness into the midday heat. One anecdote recalls a dozen weavers secretly embedding Quranic verses into tapestry borders. Textile merchants later marketed these blessed cloaks at triple price, inspiring satire about holy marketing tactics. Local tribes converted en masse, drawn by tax exemptions rather than purely spiritual conviction. Poll tax ledgers show a 40% drop in revenues after 625 CE, reflecting accelerated conversions. A blacksmith in the northern quarter began engraving swords with revelations, blending faith and forge. Laughter erupted when a camel loaded with stolen grain toppled into the city moat, its bray echoing off mud brick walls. The first Muslim coinage, minted in 633 CE, bore no human likeness, only Quranic text encircling a palm tree motif. Women's councils convened weekly under date palms, adjudicating disputes over dowries and child guardianship. A 626 CE decree allowed widows to retain half their husband's lands, an unprecedented concession in Arabian law. Palm leaves, used as writing tablets, crackled under scribe styluses, creating a symphony of legal transcription. Date syrup vats fermented near the mosque's exterior, their sweet rot drawing swarms of flies at dusk. Illness outbreaks prompted public prayer processions, where coded verses were chanted over scalding steam. Medina's climate, warmer than Mecca's highlands, fostered year-round gardening of cucumbers and figs. Garden walls doubled as learning spaces, where children recited short surahs amid vine-framed alcoves. Cultural cohesion emerged from shared hardship and nascent piety, binding clans beyond mere blood ties. As night fell, lantern-lit alleys hummed with whispered recitations, preparing hearts for Revelation's next chapter. The pulse of early Medina society became the rhythmic heartbeat, guiding the journey toward empire. In 1299 CE, frontier villages sprouted among pine-clad hills east of Sowit, marking the genesis of Osman's Beyukalik. Crisp mountain air carried resinous pine scents into mud brick homes with timber roofs. Red clay dust-coated wooden plowshares as oxen muscled through furrows beneath dawn's pale light. Villagers awoke to the clang of blacksmiths hammering horseshoes in open-air forges. Hearth fires glowed in stone hearths, roasting barley porridge infused with wild thyme gathered from nearby slopes. Women wove coarse, woolen textiles on upright looms, their rhythmic shuttle beats echoing like distant drum rolls. Vineyards on terraced fields yielded modest grape harvests by late summer, their fruit pressed into thin red wine. A 1301 CE record notes Osman sending wine jars as tribute to neighbouring Byzantine lords, both gesture and gamble. Village mosques, built of local limestone, featured simple mihrabs oriented toward Mecca's distant horizon. Call to prayer resonated across valleys, its muezzin's voice merging with bleating goats on rocky slopes. Occasional shepherd saints, known as dervishes, erected reed and mud huts near spring-fed streams. Anecdotes describe a shepherd who cured plague-stricken flocks by fasting and reciting Quranic verses. Seasonal festivals erupted after wheat harvests, with everyone feasting on roasted lamb and flatbreads. Henna ceremonies before weddings bathed brides' hands in crimson patterns symbolizing fertility. Men drank spiced goat's milk in copper cups while negotiating marital alliances across kinship networks. Annual ox-ploughing contests determined communal land allotments for the following year. Historic tax registers from 1305 CE list 16 households paying Tumar dues to Osman's household. Each household contributed 2 days of labour on fortress walls in return for security guarantees. Watchtowers perched on hilltops offered vantage points to spot both Byzantine patrols and Mongol raiders. Leather-tanned horseshoes clattered along mule-packed mountain trails linking Soet to Nicaea. Simple kilns produced glazed pottery, decorated with geometric motifs influenced by Seljuk artisans. Dishes of stewed lentils and dried apricots simmered over open fires, suffusing kitchens with sweet, savoury aromas. Village elders met beneath ancient walnut trees to adjudicate spring-term disputes over grazing rights. A 1303 CE decree by Osman standardized measurement units. 1 dunum equaled 900 square meters. Grain stores lined with cedar planks kept wheat cool, preventing infestation during harsh winters. Winter gusts turned rooftops white with frost, prompting villagers to huddle behind stone hearths. A legend tells of Osman sharing his meager bread ration with earthquake survivors after a 1302 tremor. Regional kinship ties bound Turkmen clans to Osman's household through blood and oath. Annual poll tax revenues from Soet region increased by 25% between 1300 and 1310 CE. Osage man's banner, a simple grey wolf head on crimson cloth, fluttered above prayer flags at dawn. Iron swords, crafted by village smiths, bore inlaid silver inscriptions. Gaza is my livelihood. Women's roles included managing grain distribution during sieges, as recorded in 1308 CE chronicles. Carts lumbered over stone causeways, carrying salted fish from Iznik to inland settlements. Olive oil jars sealed with wax sat beside pungent cheeses aged in cave cellars. Timber-framed wells provided potable water, their stone rims smoothed by centuries of hands. Medieval road signs carved with horseshoes pointed pilgrims toward Ertuğrul's tomb and local shrines. Oral epics celebrated the deeds of Osman, portraying him as shepherd, warrior, and sovereign. These ballads were sung by minstrels at dusk, their lyrics shaping emerging Ottoman identity. Winter wheat fields blanketed rolling hills in green, foreshadowing agricultural prosperity to come. Flute melodies drifted from reed huts as villagers prepared for Ramadan fasts beneath oak branches. Record keepers used soot and olive oil ink on parchment to log Osman's land grants and military recruits. The interplay of pastoral simplicity and martial ambition laid foundations for future conquests. As smoke curled from chimneys, villagers whispered prayers for Osman's victories against rival beyliks. Twilight hushed the plateau as stars emerged over Anatolia's silent pine forests. In that serene stillness, rural Anatolia awaited the dawn of an empire forged by blood, faith, and the plough. In 610 CE, beneath a moonless sky in the Hijaz desert, Muhammad knelt atop Jabal al-Nur, wind carrying the cool tang of acacia resin across his bowed shoulders. Revelation arrived as whispered verses in Arabic's guttural cadence, each syllable folded into his heart like molten metal into a mold. Dawn light revealed footprints pressed into sandstone, where angelic presence once hovered. Khadijah's tent exhaled lavender-scented warmth as she received his news, her steady gaze anchoring his trembling resolve. The marriage bonded religious fervor to commercial acumen, drawing Quraysh notables to both prayer circles and trading caravans. Muhammad's voice wafted through palm groves in Medina by 623 CE, reciting legal pronouncements alongside poetic admonitions. Opposition coalesced among Quraysh elites, their silk-lined robes rustling like serpents refusing unseen change. A boycott in 616 CE sealed clans in isolated valleys, where hunger-stung camels wandered amid withering olive trees. Calls for reconciliation were met with derisive laughs echoing off sandstone walls. Secret gatherings beneath Kaf Canyon's overhang saw disciples memorizing surahs by torchlight. A 619 CE pilgrimage account records Muhammad's refusal to bow before idols at Kaaba's marble columns. Women served goat stew and sour milk to the exiles, their hospitality both balm and subtle revolt. Date palms outside Taif bore witness to stoning attempts, their fronds trembling under pelting stones. Returning to Mecca limping and bloodied, his sandals etched with crimson, Muhammad embodied prophetic suffering and stoic endurance. A rival poet likened him to a thorn bush in a rose garden, provoking scorn and satire across the peninsula. By 621 CE, secret converts filled narrow alleyways in Medina, their whispered recitations audible only to the wind. The 622 CE Hijra began at dusk, date palm silhouettes guiding a furtive caravan toward salvation. Oral traditions recount Muhammad's mount sinking into quicksand, prompting angelic rescue. In Medina's palm-shaded courtyard, he delivered the Constitution of Medina, drafting communal law from fractured tribal codes. Legal articles enumerated rights of Jews, Muslims, and polytheists, a revolutionary patchwork in 7th century Arabia. Saffron-stained ink preserved these statutes on parchment, fragments of which surfaced in later Abbasid libraries. Sporadic skirmishes near Badr in 624 CE ended in unexpected victory, the clash's iron ring echoing like judged gavel strokes. The flash of steel on steel at Umayyad in 625 CE turned dust into ruby clouds under a merciless sun. Disloyal tribes were fined camels, their wealth redistributed as zakat to widows and orphans. A ceasefire in Hudaybiyah in 628 CE tasted of vinegar and opportunity, trading promises for temporary peace. Muhammad's fragrance, described as musk and mint, became as renowned as his sermons. Concerns over inheritance and tribal status drove many to convert, linking faith to socio-economic calculus. Arabic inscriptions on captured banners read, "There is no God but God," a slogan doubling as psychological warfare. A contingent of 10,000 pilgrims marched under new standards to Mecca in 629 CE, their robes brushing stone thresholds in silent protest. Muhammad entered the Kaaba courtyard in triumph on the 11th of January 630 CE, his camel's trappings glinting with date palm motifs. Idol statues were toppled, their broken fragments tossed into the courtyard well amid triumphant laughter. Legal reforms abolished tribal vendettas, mandating blood money payments in silver dirhams for murder. The 632 CE final sermon atop Jabal al-Rahmah emphasized equality, black Africans and Arab tribes bound by faith. Sand swept between rows of devotees, forging patterns akin to earlier caravan tracks. His death in the 6th of June 32 CE left a polity untested by succession but anchored in Quranic verses. Accounts of mourning noted that when date syrup vats overflowed, they became sticky reminders of communal loss. Disciples catalogued hadiths under date cluster lanterns, preserving his sayings for generations. Early caliphs navigated power vacuums as deftly as merchants steering caravans through sandstorms. The nascent community bore scars of conflict mingled with solidarity forged in shared peril. Teachings on charity redistributed grain when droughts struck, embedding faith in daily survival. Tariqas of mystics later traced lineage to these formative gatherings near Medina's palm oases. Legal codes drawn from his revelations formed the bedrock of later Sharia frameworks. By 632 CE, Islam's firmament spanned coastal Yemen to northern Levant, drawn on maps in Byzantine archives. Muhammad's legacy became a compass for statecraft as much as for spiritual seeking. His journey from solitude on Jabal al-Nur to sovereign of a united Arabia foreshadowed empires yet to rise. In 1281 CE, Osman I declared, "Gaza is my livelihood," planting a martial creed amid Anatolia's pine-clad ridges. Dawn light filtered through cedars as his followers sharpened swords on granite outcrops. Riders draped in felt cloaks rode eastward, their horses' hooves kicking red clay into autumn air. The inaugural siege of Kula-Kahizar showcased early Ottoman tactics, archers firing from fortress towers under cover of mountain mists. By 1326 CE, Bursa's walls rattled under battering rams, heralding a dawn more luminous than Constantinople's fading lamps. Ottoman engineers repurposed Byzantine aqueduct stones, blending stonework traditions with new imperial ambition. Siege horns carved from ox horns bellowed at sunrise, their sound carrying across valleys to summon peasant levies. Marriage alliances with Byzantine princesses in 1333 CE wove political legitimacy into Osman's fledgling dynasty. Byzantine gold coins melted in Bursa's foundries, recast into dirhams embossed with crescent motifs. Village smiths in Yenishehir forged chainmail shirts stamped with Osman's tamga, binding loyalty to leather straps. A caravan carrying silk from Sivas paused at Yenishehir's caravanserai, where merchants traded silken bolts for Bailic favours. Grain transports navigated treacherous passes, their cargoes taxed at 12% under Osman's revenue ordinance. Topographic surveys recorded the Anatolian plateau's contours, informing Ottoman road-building projects by 1350 CE. Dervishes journeyed alongside troops, chanting mystical verses to steel warriors' resolve before battle. A rain-soaked siege at Nicaea in 1331 CE turned sodden earth into mud pits that swallowed siege towers. Ottoman archers reputedly topped 200 arrows per archer per day during protracted sieges, a logistical feat fueling conquest. Mint masters in Iznik refined coin-striking techniques learned from Seljuk predecessors, producing currency with uniform weight of 2.97 grams. Revenue registers from 1360 CE reveal a 30% increase in horse breeding revenues after Bursa's fall. Sultan Orhan's coinage reform of 1362 CE introduced silver axe bearing the inscription, "Osman's sons, guardians of faith." Osman's successors dispatched envoys bearing pistachio nuts and sweet sherbet to secure tribal allegiances. Ghazis, holy warriors, saw each conquest as both jihad and land grant, blending piety with plunder. Tomb inscriptions at Turgutlu honored fallen Ghazis with verses from Ibn Hisham's Sirat, linking Ottoman origins to prophetic legacy. Rapid expansion forced early Ottoman governance experiments in local councils, or divans, comprising tribal chieftains and court scribes. A 1340 CE decree standardized legal procedures for dispute settlements, churching both Islamic Qadi principles and Byzantine curators. Scouts relayed intelligence of Mamluk cavalry movements via mounted couriers, covering 150 kilometers in under 36 hours. Osman's flag, a grey wolf against crimson, fluttered atop wooden palisades as a symbol of divine favor. Siege engineers innovated counterweight trebuchets, capable of hurling 50-kilogram stones over 200 meters. Villagers requisitioned by Osman's forces received daily rations of 2 loaves of barley bread and half a liter of buttermilk. Ottoman caravans lit with oil lamps traced routes now inscribed in Halil İnalcı K's economic annals. Chroniclers noted Osman's habit of offering conquered towns 3 days to surrender before hostilities commenced. Patronage of madrasa foundations in Yenişehir began the fusion of education and statecraft. Artistic motifs on early Ottoman tiles featured stylized tulips, prefiguring later Topkapı Palace aesthetics. Siege drums inspired fanfares carved into jasper columns later installed in Edirne's İsa Bey Mosque. Orhan's tomb, clad in molded brick patterns, showcased architectural syncretism of Byzantine and Seljuk styles. Sultanas in the harem influenced state decisions through coded embroidery messages delivered via eunuchs. Courtiers in Bursa's inner court wore velvet robes scented with rosewater distilled from Byzantine gardens. A clandestine correspondence in 1374 CE between Ottoman envoys and Genoese merchants secured naval timber supplies from Pera. Elite feasts at court featured pheasant stews dyed with saffron, underscoring imperial extravagance. A 1389 CE Defter notes 3,000 janissaries recruited from Christian youths converted under Devshirme quotas. Annual garrison inspections ensured weapon calibers matched standards. Bowstrings of 22 newtons tension. A 1391 CE treaty with Karaman Beylik ceded strategic passes in exchange for marriage bonds. Diplomatic dispatches arrived on mulberry paper scrolls sealed with imperial tugra. Ottoman expansion under Orhan spanned 200 kilometers in 2 decades, a testament to agile statecraft. Conquest narratives recited in palace halls equated each fallen fortress with another verse of prophetic fulfillment. These formative campaigns laid the bedrock for imperial ambition that would claim the caliphate by 1517. In 1517 CE, Sultan Selim's army thundered across the Sinai plain, tents billowing like dark clouds on the horizon. The acrid smell of gunpowder, mingled with desert sand, kicked up by janissary footsteps. A biting Levantine wind carried the copper tang of blood from skirmishes at Ridania. Ottoman banners, black tugra on ivory field, snapped against steel-lipped drums. Cairo's minarets trembled under cannon salvos, echoing beneath a brooding sky. Selim rode an Andalusian stallion scented with musk, its hooves stirring rose-petal fragments from Mamluk gardens. After victory at Marj Darbik, the caliphal mantle passed from Abbasid line to Ottoman hand amid ceremonial incense clouds. Selim's court artisans repurposed Abbasid relics, golden Qurans and copper lamps, into Topkapı's treasury vaults. In February 1518, Cairo's Al-Azhar scholars bowed only once before Selim's jeweled scimitar, signaling reluctant recognition. Concubine politics in harem, Humayun unfolded behind silken screens where sultanas exchanged whispered alliances. Kosum Sultan's mother secretly dispatched messages stitched into velvet hems to shape succession debates. Eunuchs carried ambergris-scented letters outlining court factions' preferences for heirs. A 1520 CE edict mandated that all provincial governors acknowledge the Ottoman Caliphate in Friday sermons. Sunni jurists in Istanbul argued in leather-bound fatwa compilations whether Selim's claim derived from divine writ or military might. Shi'i dignitaries in Safavid Iran dismissed Ottoman caliphal titles as political theatre, continuing allegiance to their own imams. Ottoman mintmasters struck gold sultani coins bearing the inscription Khalifat al-Mu'minin, encircling a crescent. The mint in Cairo produced 120,000 dinars in the first year, funding mosque endowments across North Africa. Marble floors in Topkapi's divan chamber glistened with rosewater residue after jurists sealed treaties by fountain light. An inscription over the imperial council door read, "From prophet to sultan, binding past to present." A clandestine rumour spoke of hidden Abbasid parchments stashed beneath Sultan Ahmad's mosque foundation. Tax registers show a 33% increase in pilgrimage revenues after 1517, as pilgrims sought legitimacy under Ottoman protection. Pilgrim caravans departing Damascus laden with perfume jars and saffron weighed their packs against the colourful promise of safe passage. Sultanas hosted private gatherings in jade-tiled chambers where maps of Mecca and Medina were traced in sand. Harem musicians plucked qanun strings beneath filigreed skylights, their melodies blending Providence with palace intrigue. Reports from Aleppo in 1522 CE mention scholarly debates held in caravanserai courtyards, echoing Ottoman Safavid rivalries. Selim's daughter Hatice arranged marriage pacts with Crimean Khans to secure northern frontiers. A 1519 envoy to Vienna described Habsburg ambassadors dazzled by Ottoman protocol's blend of mysticism and martial pageantry. Incense burners shaped like crescents perfumed council sessions, their smoke weaving through carved wooden latticework. Selim's death in September 1520 CE on the palace terrace left the empire's pulse in his son Suleiman's hands. Funeral rites mixed Ottoman banners with Abbasid standards dipped in solemn black. Sunni scholars recorded Selim's epitaph as "Scourge of God," a title both feared and revered. Concubines wept pearl-like tears as candlelight flickered on amber walls during his final night. A fatwa circulated permitting succession outside primogeniture, cementing Ottoman dynastic flexibility. Provincial muftis recorded sermons praising divine sanction rather than conquest, shifting narrative tone. In 1521 CE, Suleiman's accession khutbahs invoked both warrior lineage and prophetic continuity. Damascus's Umayyad mosque displayed Ottoman banners alongside Abbasid relics, a visual manifesto of continuity. Elite corps of ulema travelled with Suleiman's armies, inscribing Quranic verses on captured fortress gates. Pilgrims arriving in Mecca reported Ottoman guards reciting salawat amid shifting tribal tensions. Ottoman caliphal authority reached into North Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Red Sea ports by 1530 CE. Fatwa compilations expanded to include Ottoman land grants under caliphal prerogative, redefining Waqf structures. Poetry in court salons equated Suleiman's reign with prophetic promise, blending divine illusion and imperial luster. Perfumed rose petals carpeted Topkapi's courtyard during Eid celebrations, symbolizing both splendor and piety. The empire's transformation from frontier beylichlik to universal caliphate hinged on sermons as much as on sieges. Courtiers joked that the caliph's turban weighed more than his warhorse's saddle. These events fused prophecy, politics, and palace intrigue into a caliphate whose echoes would lull centuries of history into sleep. Beneath the Ottoman-era green-lead dome of Medina's Prophet's Mosque lies a layered tapestry of Umayyad and later renovations. Musky incense from brass censers drifts through marble arcades, mingling with the earthy scent of ancient stone. Ottoman tiles gleam under lantern light, their celadon hues contrasting with sun-bleached Umayyad brickwork beneath. Archaeological surveys in the 1970s identified brick fragments stamped with surah inscriptions dating to 705 CE. Ottoman masons repurposed these fragments during 16th century restorations ordered by Selim's court. Halil Inalçı's Economic Annals note purchases of quarry stone from Sinai for structural reinforcement in 1556 CE. Disputed claims suggest original Umayyad foundations survive 15 meters below the current floor. Ground-penetrating radar in 2018 detected anomalies interpreted as buried mosaic channels, though no excavation followed. A legend holds that Sultan Mahmud II secretly sealed a hidden chamber beneath the mihrab, rumored to contain Muhammad's ablution basin. No Ottoman document corroborates the basin's relocation, leaving its existence to oral tradition. Ibn Hisham's 9th century biography makes no mention of a dome, focusing instead on the mosque's wooden columns and plaster walls. Early Umayyad chronicles describe red brick arches washed in gypsum plaster, their lime-white glow visible from Medina's outskirts. In 1491 CE, a traveller's diary recounts crumbling Umayyad stones visible at mosque corners, suggesting partial survival. Ottoman builders overlaid these stones with glazed tiles bearing sultanic tugra motifs. Chemical analysis of tile glazes reveals lead oxide ratios consistent with 16th century Anatolian kilns. Scholars debate whether the underlying bricks formed a contiguous layer or isolated structural cores. Site maps from Inalçık and Umayyad show three phases of expansion between 684 CE and 1612 CE, each leaving architectural palimpsests. Surface weathering patterns on mystery stones indicate cycles of wetting and drying that predate Ottoman hydraulic systems. Local tradition claims a hidden vault under the dome houses fragments of the original Kaaba door, though no record supports this. Modern conservationists argue that invasive excavations risk destabilizing centuries-old mortar bonds. Ottoman repair logs reference ancient ivories, uncovered during foundation digs, now lost in Topkapi's treasury records. A carved sandstone lintel-bearing Kufic script once displayed near the dome's base was moved to Istanbul in 1585 CE. Its current whereabouts remain unknown, fueling theories of secret imperial collections. Visitors today tread polished marble floors that mask uneven sublayers of rubble and historic debris. Laser scanning in 2020 produced 3D models showing slight domal asymmetries likely from Umayyad artisans' uneven keystone placement. Preservation reports note microfractures in lead sheeting, suggesting original dome curvature endures beneath green paint. Cultural significance elevates the dome beyond architecture, symbolizing continuity from earliest Islamic reigns to Ottoman patronage. Sunni pilgrims revere the green hue as a signifier of prophetic presence, while Shi'i sources often emphasize Imam Ali's burial near the site. Debates over authenticity reflect broader tensions between restoration and preservation philosophies in Islamic heritage. Anecdotal accounts describe custodians whispering prayers into structural fissures to invoke divine safeguarding. The mosque's function as both shrine and communal hub complicates any invasive archaeological approach. Satellite imagery reveals groundwater seepage patterns beneath the courtyard, raising concerns about foundational integrity. Conservationists recommend non-invasive monitoring to balance heritage value with structural safety. The Green Dome's layered history underscores shifting notions of sacred space and imperial authority. Each brick's provenance, from Umayyad kiln to Ottoman workshop, narrates centuries of political and religious claims. Visitors touching the dome's base invoke blessings tied to both Muhammad's memory and Ottoman custodianship. Digital reconstructions aim to visualize vanished Umayyad phases, though lacking physical excavation data. Scholarly consensus remains elusive. Does the dome preserve early Islamic fabric, or primarily reflect Ottoman design ethos? The mystery endures as pilgrims gaze upward, seeking solace in continuity rather than certitude. Acoustic studies note subtle echoes beneath the dome, as if prayers of past centuries reverberate still. Architectural palimpsests beneath thousands of footsteps form an unseen tapestry of faith and power. As daylight dims, lantern glow reveals tile joints that mask centuries-old repair scars. The Green Dome stands as both monument and question, its authenticity woven into Islam's living tapestry. Unraveling its secrets demands patience, for echoes in stone whisper only under careful stewardship. This layered enigma sets the stage for deeper exploration of women's legal rights evolution. In early Medina courtrooms, warm air carried the musk of worn papyrus and heated brass ink pots. Flickering lanterns cast shifting shadows on judges' benches carved from cedarwood. Leather-bound manuscripts of Quranic verses lay open beside codified legal opinions in Arabic script. Jurists in loose woolen robes debated aloud whether women's sworn testimony held equivalent weight to men's declarations. Moist breath of petitioners steamed beneath veils as they presented inheritance claims in hushed tones. A 625 CE Medina edict granted women 1/8 share of an estate when surviving multiple heirs, a radical departure from pre-Islamic customs. Ink-stained fingers traced verse 411 on parchment, where grain distributions and property divisions were delineated. Matrimonial contracts in Medina specified dower payments of up to 500 dirhams, binding faith to fiscal responsibility. By 640 CE, papyrus records reveal women petitioning for divorce under khul provisions, exchanging dower for freedom. Market gossip in Medina's souks whispered of a widow who reclaimed her orchard after successfully litigating before 3 male judges. The scent of frankincense burned at courtroom doorways, purifying spaces where legal fates were decided. Early Ottoman qanunnamehs in 15th century Bursa quietly omitted clauses confirming women's court testimony, a retrenchment noted by Berkey. In 1475 CE, an Aisha Hatun in Bursa petitioned for guardianship of her minor son, invoking both Sharia and local custom. Petition rolls from Inalcikay's archives list her claim alongside 27 other women seeking land rights. Murmurs of dissent rose when jurists cited gendered precedents, their leather-bound fatwa compilations thickening by the hour. Women's appeals were often heard in separate alcoves, where carved lattice screens muffled their voices. Golden light filtered through stained glass windows, illuminating dotted margins where female legal scholars annotated texts. A rare 1492 CE dispute in Edirne saw a female scribe's margin note override a male jurist's ruling on dowry claims. Ottoman Diwan registers from 1520 CE record 12% of inheritance cases initiated by women, an uptick reflecting evolving norms. Inheritance rituals sometimes took place beneath rose gardens in Topkapa's courtyards, where petitioners recited verses before strewn petals. Oral accounts recount a harem official who smuggled legal opinions to women, enabling clandestine studies of jurisprudence. By 1540 CE, muftis in Cairo issued fatwas affirming women's right to manage property independently of male guardians. Grain ration distributions documented in Egyptian defters show widows receiving equal shares to male heirs in 8 provinces. Debate over Quranic verse 434 centered on whether protect and maintain implied authority or merely financial obligation. Venetian envoys in 1573 CE noted Ottoman courts accepting women's testimony in merchant disputes, surprising European observers. The rustle of silk garments accompanied female litigants as they approached marble steps of Qadi courts. A 1602 CE Constantinople judgment upheld a woman's claim to ancestral Waqf revenues, setting a precedent cited for decades. Court transcripts reveal jurists invoking both Donner's historical analyses and Berkey's social survey as interpretive guides. Candle wax melted into ornate brass trays, as judges recorded rulings on parchment scrolls. Rosewater dripped from carved niches onto mosaic floors where appeals were filed. Literacy rates among elite Ottoman women climbed to an estimated 15% by 1650 CE, based on madrasa enrollment rolls. Women's endowment deeds elaborated charitable works funding schools, hospitals, and orphanages across the empire. In 1683 CE, a female philanthropist in Aleppo endowed a library, inscribing her name alongside caliphal patrons. Ottoman land surveys integrated women's Waqf properties into provincial tax assessments by 1715 CE. Shifts in legal philosophy blended Sharia tenets with customary Anatolian practices, creating hybrid jurisprudence. The soft murmur of water from courtyard fountains accompanied confidential legal consultations. Sultanas influenced reforms by hosting jurists in harem salons, where poetry and policy intermingled. By the late 17th century, printed legal manuals circulated in Istanbul, including sections on women's rights. Debate over witness validity remained the most contested issue, reflecting tensions between theology and pragmatism. Cultural impact rippled through elite circles as women managed Waqf schools teaching Quranic literacy to girls. Oral epic songs celebrated female jurists as unsung architects of social order. Their stories passed through generations. As dusk fell, marble halls cleared, leaving silent scrolls and sealed petitions awaiting dawn. These evolving rites underscored a dynamic interplay between sacred text and lived experience. The next inquiry probes why frontier conversions prioritized tax relief over spiritual fervor. This legal metamorphosis of women's status bridges personal agency and imperial authority. On Anatolia's fringes in the 14th century, dawn broke over terraced fields where converted peasants tilled inherited Byzantine plots. Morning mists clung to grapevines, their dew-laden leaves reflecting pale sunlight. Tax registers from 1365 CE list Muslim households paying jizya at half the rate once imposed on Christian tenants. The sharp whistle of shepherd flutes accompanied labourers sowing barley, their footsteps stirring frosted soil. A Defter in 1372 CE records a 60% spike in conversion petitions following Osman's Tuma reforms. Grain storerooms boasted increased stocks as Muslim peasants redirected savings from reduced levies. Villagers met beneath walnut trees to discuss Waqf land allocations prompted by new religious status. Anecdotes convey that some converts confessed piety only after kneeling on mosque carpets, eyes downcast to avoid neighborly judgment. Oral epics celebrated these new believers as beneficiaries of divine economic justice rather than spiritual awakening. A 1380 CE ducal decree exempted converted artisans from certain tolls, boosting workshop outputs in Yenishehir. The scent of freshly kilned tiles mingled with saffron rice cooking over open stoves in village kitchens. Some historians attribute frontier conversions to genuine mystical experiences reported in dervish lodges. Legends describe shepherd saints knitting Quranic verses into wool cloaks, their faith-embroidered garments worn in procession. Muezzins' calls from simple limestone minarets replaced church bells in repurposed basilicas. Records indicate a 45% decline in Byzantine-style icons after 1375 CE, their wooden panels repurposed for mosque pulpits. Converts often adopted Ottoman naming conventions, Ahmet replacing Andronikos, signifying both faith and fealty. Village blacksmiths engraved new Muslim names on horseshoes and harnesses, melding identity with iron. A chronicle by Quartet notes that some preachers offered free lessons in Arabic literacy to incentivize sincere participation. Tax ledger annotations include margin notes, lamenting poverty-driven conversions, devoid of heartfelt conviction. Travelers' accounts mention hesitant converts attending mosque gatherings in woolen cloaks to shield trembling bodies. A local epic recounts a weaver whose first Quranic recital emerged in tears, sparking authentic devotion among peers. The clang of forge hammers echoed alongside the rhythmic recitation of surah verses at dusk. Regional governors sometimes mandated attendance at Friday sermons, blurring lines between piety and obligation. Gatehouse custodians recorded mosque attendance in ledgers to monitor newfound Muslims' sincerity. Eid celebrations featured public readings of conversion lists, their names pronounced like honors rather than judgments. Oral testimonies vary on whether mass baptisms preceded conversions or if declaration of faith sufficed alone. Tax relief effects on household income rose by an estimated 30%, according to Inalchu K's economic surveys. Some Christian clergy retained roles as mosque caretakers, illustrating pragmatic syncretism on remote frontiers. Scholar deacons who converted often became tutors in madrasa schools, fostering Islamic pedagogy. The interplay of fiscal incentive and spiritual promise created a frontier faith mosaic resistant to simple typologies. Sufi lodges in caves offered mystical retreats that blended Christian hermit traditions with Islamic asceticism. Pilgrimage to Bursa's Grand Mosque became a rite of passage for new converts seeking community acceptance. Stone benches around courtyards bore carved inscriptions thanking Selim I for just governance and reduced taxes. Midday sun-warmed marble ablution pools, drawing hesitant converts into communal cleansing rituals. Debate among modern scholars questions whether tax policies trumped prophetic appeal in driving frontier conversions. Ceramics unearthed near Gaziantep show Quranic calligraphy motifs appearing by 1400 CE, marking cultural diffusion. Some converts commissioned personal prayer rugs woven with Anatolian kilim patterns, bridging tribal and Islamic aesthetics. Market stalls sold translated Quran excerpts alongside trading scales, a pragmatic blend of faith and commerce. Sultans' edicts circulated in bilingual Turkish and Arabic decrees, ensuring both locals and newcomers understood legal shifts. Conversion narratives often mention miraculous well clearings attributed to new believers' first prayers. Ottoman chroniclers recorded border garrisons' surprise at empty church cloisters, replaced by mosque congregants. Political theorists later cited these frontier cases as models of fiscal statecraft, where religion and revenue entwined. In twilight hours, mosque lamps flickered against stone walls, still bearing faint crosses, overwritten with crescents. These complex motivations illustrate how empire building interlaced economic strategy with spiritual transformation. The next segment contrasts palace opulence with these frontier realities, guiding us toward elite contrasts. In 705 CE, the Umayyad Caliph al-Walid I commissioned Damascus's Grand Palace atop a rocky plateau overlooking the Barada's emerald ribbon. Sweet rosewater breezes drifted through marble columns carved with intricate vegetal arabesques. Gilded mosaics on vaulted ceilings shimmered like frozen streams beneath torchlight. Perfumed servants in silk tunics offered sherbet in gold-rimmed cups, its cool sweetness cutting through summer heat. The palace's central courtyard boasted a rectangular reflecting pool mirroring cedar groves framed by basalt-tiled walkways. Women of the harem moved like silent odes amid colonnades, their ivory anklets chiming against polished stone. A poet once likened palace birds released at dawn to imperial decrees set free upon the city. Caliphal marriages arranged in 717 CE wed Umayyad princes to Byzantine princesses, sealing diplomatic treaties in blood and betrothal rings. Mosaic panels depicted gazelles and peacocks imported from Sind, their jeweled eyes glinting under midday sun. A visitor's diary in 720 CE recorded a feast of pheasant stews dyed with saffron, served on silver platters stamped with caliphal insignia. Slaves carved hyacinthine marble bowls filled with pomegranate seeds, their juice staining white columns. Inheritance rituals took place on raised marble platforms, where dowries of golden dinars and silk bolts changed hands. Court jesters whispered dark jokes about eunuch envy when sultanas' jewels outshone crown gems. Legal scholars drafted fatwa essays beneath gilded lamps, their quills scratching like restless cicadas. A 725 CE record notes that the palace consumed 10,000 vessels of olive oil monthly for lamp lighting. Courtiers circulated rumors that the caliph's favorite concubine dictated policy through coded embroidery messages. Silver inkwells, shaped like eagles perched on Qadi benches, symbols of judicial authority under Umayyad law. The palace stables housed Arabian stallions, whose bridles bore silver crescents, a new emblem of dynasty. Servants scattered rose petals along marble paths during Eid, whose scent clung to guest garments. Court musicians plucked qanuns beneath colonnaded alcoves, their melodies weaving Ottoman tunes centuries ahead of time. Chroniclers described the palace garden's orange groves as a fragrant labyrinth where intrigue blossomed like citrus blossoms. Laughter echoed when a runaway peacock upended banquet tables, sending gold goblets clattering. Byzantine artisans inscribed Greek verses on mosaics alongside Arabic calligraphy, a testament to cultural fusion. Caliphal decrees were proclaimed from a marble pulpit whose steps bore carved recordings of earlier Roman laws. Whispered alliances formed in hidden chambers behind cedar paneling, where lawyers brokered power through hush. A 728 CE census recorded 500 palace staff, eunuchs, craftsmen, poets, and concubines. Carved marble benches lined corridors where sultanas recited poetry to passing courtiers. Silver-plated water channels sluiced courtyards, their gentle babble, a counterpoint to courtly scheming. Women served as diplomatic intermediaries, hosting Byzantine envoys in perfumed audience halls. Horses' hoofbeats on cobblestone drives announced arrivals of tribal delegations bearing tribute. A dark joke circulated that the caliph's turban required as many gemstones as his alliance marriages. Gold leaf underfoot glinted when dignitaries knelt to receive scrolls of tax exemptions. Watercolor depictions of palace life found in 8th century manuscripts reveal richly hued silks and layered turbans. Perfume jars inscribed with caliphal tugra lay displayed like holy relics in guests' chambers. Legal disputes over palace lands were adjudicated by grand Qadi courts held beneath domed reception rooms. Caliphal lotteries distributed land grants to favored tribes, a gamble dressed in imperial generosity. Evening breezes carried the scent of jasmine from hidden garden niches. Courtiers jested that palace intrigue rivaled the labyrinthine channels of the Barada River. Gold-smithed daggers, displayed in the armory, bore inscriptions invoking divine protection. Court historians recorded the palace's expenditure at 1.2 million dirhams annually, funding both feasts and fortifications. The cultural resonance of Umayyad splendor echoed through Andalusian palaces centuries later. As dusk fell, lantern-lit corridors glowed like molten amber, guiding guests toward dream-filled halls. The opulence and political theatre of Umayyad Damascus serve as a mirror for later Ottoman grandeur. This contrast highlights how elite spaces refracted power through both beauty and brutality. Next, we traverse from mosaic halls to imperial chambers of the Ottoman court. In 1520 CE, Suleiman I ordered Topkapi Palace's royal chambers to be expanded atop Seraglio Point, its white marble facades gleaming like soaked pearls at sunrise. Sweet rosewater scents drifted through arched corridors, mingling with the earthy chill of Bosphorus breezes. Velvet cushions embroidered with gold thread tulip motifs lined the sultan's dais beneath a crystal chandelier cascading droplets of refracted light. Silk draperies dyed in Ottoman crimson swayed gently in breezeways, their rustle echoing like whispered courtly secrets. Lanterns carved from alabaster shed a honeyed glow over mosaic-tiled floors inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Eunuchs in ivory tunics offered trays of candied bergamot and spiced sherbet, their silver bowls clinking softly in stately rhythm. Chamber walls bore hand-painted frescoes of cypress groves and galloping gazelles imported from Safavid workshops. Sultanas walked on silken slippers embroidered with coral and pearl, their soft footsteps muffled by velvet runners. Court poets recited panegyrics beneath domed alcoves, their measured verses drifting through Muqana's ceilings. A 1536 CE inventory records 2,000 crystal decanters filled with distilled rosewater for evening ablutions. Perfumed oils of jasmine and sandalwood glowed in brass lamps, carved with tugra seals. Harem musicians tuned kanons and knee flutes behind lattice screens, their melodies rippling like distant sea waves. The Sultan's private library housed 3,500 manuscripts on yellowed parchment, each spine gilded with arabesque calligraphy. Polished agate ink pots sat atop cedarwood desks, next to ostrich feather quills poised over illuminated Quranic pages. Courtiers in brocade kaftans exchanged dark jokes about the bazaar's price of eunuch salaries outpacing gold coins. Marble fountains burbled in shadowed courtyards, scattering droplets that shimmered in filigree light. An official 1545 CE edict required all palace artisans to swear loyalty over a basin of rosewater and musk. Silk-padded walls muffled council debates on provincial appointments, their timbre hushed yet charged with intrigue. The Grand Vizier's seal, a carved carnelian disc, rested on tables laden with dispatches from Constantinople to Cairo. Tureens of lamb stew simmered over copper braziers, sending lambent lights flickering across domed ceilings. Harvest banquet tables groaned under platters of honey-glazed figs, pistachio-strewn rice, and saffron-laced pilaf. Gold enamel goblets clinked amid toasts to victories in Belgrade and Budapest. A 1551 CE mission from Venice marveled at palace inventories listing 5,000 meters of Italian velvet alone. Court astronomers mapped lunar cycles from marble balconies, their brass astrolabes gleaming against sunrise. Harem corridors echoed with the murmur of sultanas reciting poetry in hushed tones beneath lattice screens. Secret edicts slipped through jade-carved shutters, directing timber shipments from Crimea for naval expansion. Jewel-studded daggers presented during Eid glittered with emeralds and spinels sourced from Mughal mines. Slaves swept mosaic floors underfoot, while sharing sardonic quips about palace intrigue's endless dance. Perfume jars, shaped like tulip buds, lined marble shelves, each bearing the Sultan's personal seal in lapis lazuli. Silk pennants embroidered with the crescent and star fluttered above council entrances. The Sultan's throne, a carved oak chair plated in silver, sat upon a raised dais of onyx and porphyry. Servants poured rose-infused sherbet into goblets that left trails of condensation on marble ledges. A hidden stairwell led to the treasury, where chests of pearls and change-forged dirhams gleamed under oil lamps. Evening breezes carried the distant call to prayer from Hagia Sophia across the waterway. Court historians recorded Suleiman's annual patronage at 1.8 million akse directed to madrasa endowments. Silk banners dyed in pastel blues proclaimed, "Just ruler of men," over palace gates. The sweet crackle of crushed rose petals underfoot accompanied ceremonial processions to the imperial mosque. Harem concubines spun poetry under latticework windows, their stanzas whispered through amber-hued rooms. The ice-dark waters of the Bosphorus shimmered in moonlight beyond open balconies. Golden inlay on ivory panels depicted hunting scenes from ancient Persian epics. A 1,566 CE inventory logs. 1,200 bronze candlesticks used to illuminate nocturnal palace debates. Tassels of silk and silver dangled from canopy poles, brushing ornate filigree as courtiers passed. A dark jest noted that the Sultan's turban required more fabric than the summer cloak of any provincial governor. As lanterns dimmed at midnight, corridors hushed into velvet silence, broken only by distant water-wheel creaks. In this realm of gilded luxury and covert intrigue, imperial splendor lulled restless minds toward a deep, ornate sleep. In the fading light of dusk, the Bab, Umayyad gardens exhaled the heady scent of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth. Marble-lined pathways glistened with dew under flickering lanterns hung from ornate iron brackets. Peacocks strutted across manicured lawns, their sapphire feathers rustling like silk against stone. A distant call to prayer drifted from Topkapa's hidden minarets, weaving through cypress boughs. Rosewater mist clung to marble benches, each drop reflecting lantern glow like trapped stars. Garden fountains burbled in candlelit courtyards, their pale arcs of water tracing silver curves before dissolving into echo. Stone urns brimmed with ylang-ylang blooms, releasing creamy fragrances that softened the night air. Eunuch custodians moved like whispers between clipped boxwood hedges, their sandals stirring fallen petals. In 1651 CE, a peacock escaped its gilded cage and roosted atop the outer walls, its mournful cry echoing over the Bosphorus. Courtiers in silk kaftans leaned against porphyry columns, murmuring about the Sultan's penchant for midnight feasts. A lone sultana oversaw tea served in filigreed silver cups, the mint's chill cutting through the humid evening. Lantern smoke curled upward, carrying whispers of palace intrigue into the olive-scented night. Date syrup lamps cast amber pools on mosaic floors, their wicks crackling like distant laughter. Garden pools mirrored quivering candle flames, scattering light across vine-clad arcades. A dark jest claimed the Sultan's candles burned brighter than his vizier's promises. Ivy-clad trellises thrummed with hidden cicadas, their summer songs suspended in moonlit hush. Servants refilled alabaster bowls with sugared almonds, their soft clink punctuating hushed conversations. The cool brush of marble column capitals brushed fingertips like a lover's farewell. An anecdote recalls a treasury clerk who traded his last dirham for a single night under these silken shadows. Court poets inscribed verses on parchment by fountainside, their quills scratching like restless spirits, jasmine vines draped overhead, petals falling like pale confetti onto velvet cushions. Rose petals slipped into fountain basins, swirling like whispered memories of past festivals. A servant's cough echoed through archways, breaking the silence with mortal reminders. The palace clock chimed midnight, its sonorous tones vibrating through carved wooden doors. Sweet bergamot tea steamed in copper trays, its citrusy warmth countering the night's cool embrace. A harem concubine hummed a lullaby beneath lattice screens, her melody threading through the garden's hush. Lantern light pooled beneath oleander bushes, illuminating hidden nooks where secrets lingered. Night-blooming cereus unfurled its white petals, each blossom lasting a single moonlit hour. Perfumed oils of sandalwood and amber glowed in brass burners, their smoke weaving through cypress silhouettes. The soft drip of fountain spouts formed a rhythmic pulse, lulling footsteps toward stillness. Peacocks preened by poolside marble ledges, their brilliance dulled by the night's gentle embrace. Servants tiptoed past jade-carved shutters, their shadows flickering against stained glass panels. A court jester's whispered joke about palace taxes drifted across rose gardens, and vanished into night. The Sultan's turban lay abandoned on an ebony table, its jeweled band catching glints of lantern flame. Gentle breezes carried distant lute chords from inner chambers, melodies blending with fountain echoes. Velvet draperies billowed in unseen gusts, their folds brushing mosaic thresholds. Silk slippers shuffled along cobblestones, footsteps soft as a reverent prayer. A final peacock call echoed off marble pillars, a lone note fading into velvet darkness. Servants extinguished lanterns one by one, each flame's sigh marking the garden's descent into sleep. Dew-laden petals closed around hidden blossoms, their secrets sealed until dawn's first light. A single candle remained by a marble basin, its glow shrinking as embers cooled. The palace exhaled a collective breath, as if yielding to night's restorative embrace. In that suspended twilight, power and poetry intertwined beneath silent stars. The hush of fountains and falling petals offered a final lullaby to restless minds. As lantern glow faded, the empire itself drifted toward a deep, ornate sleep. As the candles gutter and the last echoes of palace fountains fade into the night, let the weight of centuries pull you gently towards slumber. From the shifting sands of the Hijaz to the gilded halls of Topkapi, we've walked paths of faith, power, and whispered intrigue, and now it's time to let those echoes soothe your mind. Close your eyes, let the ancient stones and moonlit courtyards carry you off, and may your dreams be as enduring as the empires we've uncovered.